Well, here in Daniel chapter 5, we have the defeat of the Babylonian Empire at the hands of the Medo-Persian Empire. If you remember back to chapter 2, when King Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, he had that dream of a statue. And remember, the statue had the head of gold, and then its chest and arms were made of silver. And Daniel explained the interpretation that the head of gold represented the Babylonian Empire, and the chest and arms of silver represented the Medo-Persian Empire. Well, now we come to the transition from the Babylonian Empire to the Medo-Persian Empire. And remember, the theme of the book of Daniel is the sovereignty of God. That God is sovereign, God is in control. Even though the Jewish people were conquered and living in exile in Babylon, God was still sovereign in the affairs of man, and God was still working out His plan and His purposes on behalf of His people. Same's true for us. God is sovereign. God's still in control. God is still working out His purpose and His plan in each of our lives. You know, Psalm 75 says, "For exaltation comes neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south, but God is the judge. He puts down one and He exalts another." In chapter 5, God puts down the Babylonian Empire and He raises up the Medo-Persian Empire in its place. Now, before we get into chapter 5, it's helpful to understand a timeline and some context here. About 25 years have passed since the end of chapter 4. So between chapter 4 and chapter 5 in Daniel, 25 years go by. Nebuchadnezzar is now dead after reigning as king over Babylon for 44 years. Daniel, the prophet, is now in his 80s. He's no longer serving as an advisor to the king, nor is he in charge of the wise men of Babylon. Daniel is enjoying retirement at this point, playing golf and fishing or whatever he did in retirement in Babylon. Now, after Nebuchadnezzar died, there was a rapid succession of kings that followed him. Most of the kings that followed Nebuchadnezzar experienced an untimely death. For example, one of the kings that followed Nebuchadnezzar was assassinated by his brother. Another died in battle. One served for like a month. Chapter 5 deals with a king named Belshazzar. Belshazzar was the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, and he was the 5th king to rule after Nebuchadnezzar. So we're 5 kings down the line from Nebuchadnezzar here with Belshazzar. Belshazzar was actually co-regent or co-ruler with his father named Nabonidus. Nabonidus isn't going to be on the test, so you don't have to worry about that. But the reason that Belshazzar and Nabonidus co-ruled over the Babylonian Empire is because Belshazzar's father, Nabonidus, led the Babylonian army, and he was off fighting wars in Arabia for more than 10 years. So Nabonidus is really the king, but he's absent from the kingdom for 10 years. Belshazzar, his son, remained in Babylon, and he ran the empire. So Nabonidus was the king, but he's an absentee king. He wasn't there, so his son Belshazzar was the one running the kingdom in his place, in his absence. I point that out because some scholars consider Nabonidus to be the last king of Babylon and not Belshazzar. And so sometimes you'll see that in some books. So verse 1 now says, Belshazzar the king made a great feast for 1,000 of his lords and drank wine in the presence of the 1,000. So Belshazzar, he's in the city of Babylon, and the city of Babylon was located in modern-day Iraq. He has this party, this feast, that he throws in his palace. Now, archaeologists have unearthed the remains of the king's palace there in Iraq, and they've partially reconstructed some of the footprint of the king's palace. And I have a picture for you, so you can get a picture in your mind, I guess. This is just the king's palace. This isn't the whole city of Babylon. This is just where the king lived. Right? Remember we talked about the city of Babylon. The walls around the city extended more than 15 miles around the city. So this is where the king lived, and it's just, you can just see kind of like the foundation stones of all the buildings of the palace. Some of you that were maybe stationed in Iraq may have visited this palace. You see the big courtyard in the middle of the palace there. That's where archaeologists believe that this feast in Daniel chapter 5 took place, in that room that's in the middle of the palace. That was likely the hall where this great feast was held. That hall that's there, it's roughly 52 feet wide and 170 feet long. It's almost 9,000 square feet. So it's a huge space for a huge party. We were told 1,000 people were invited to this party.